Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k. Got another Necrons video for you today because now we've merged some of the channels, so we're going to be doing a few more factions on this channel. So if you missed that update, we've got a video. I don't know when I released it now. Was it on the 1st of February? I believe I released a video explaining the merging of the channels. But we're doing Necrons today. That's going to be most of the videos on this channel. And today we're going to be looking at one of the character units, which is going to be the Royal Warden. One quick plug while I remember, guys, we've just opened a Facebook group on Facebook, of course, and I'm posting a daily picture every day of sort of the behind the scenes, what's going on at Planet 40k, mainly to do with hobbying, and if it's not to do with 40k, it's just what I'm doing in general. So if I'm painting certain things, I'm doing certain terrain, maybe I'm playing certain games against certain people, there'll be a daily photo that I'm putting up, and it kind of just keeps me motivated to do the hobbying side of things, which isn't really something I massively enjoy in terms of painting, in terms of modelling. I'd rather just get involved in the tactical stuff and just playing. But of course you've got to be involved in the hobbying side as well. This is not just a playing game, it's a hobby as well. But yeah, if you could kindly jump onto the Facebook group, the link will be down in the description below. We're trying to build a sort of another little community on Facebook. So the Royal Warden, let's get into this data card, go through some of the bits and bobs, go through my preferred tactics, and at the end of the video I will be rating or hating the Royal Warden. No in-betweens, one or the other. Right, datasheet wise, we're on a 32mm base. We're of course an infantry character model, so we've got the option of enhancements if needed, and it's for only 40 points. It's dirt cheap as far as characters go. There's only the Locust Destroyers that are cheaper in the book, and of course enhancements. And it's the same points cost currently as the Canoptic Scarabs. So extremely cheap. Let's get into why. So it's got a movement of 5 inches, toughness 5, 3+ armor save, the wounds is 4, leadership 6+, and the OC is 1. That's the general statistics of this model. Pretty bog standard. There's no invulnerable save, you wouldn't expect one for 40 points. And that's the model that you're going to get to add to a unit. Now we should probably mention what units can be associated with the Royal Warden. You've got options of the two. You've got either Necron Immortals or Necron Warriors. There's no Lich Guard here, it's purely the shooty stuff, the Warriors and the Immortals. So we'll have to bear that in mind when we get into the ability section to why you would actually add the Royal Warden. We'll get onto that in a moment though. Let's get into the range and melee attacks because it's still going to do a bit of work on its own. Range weapon, which is the main part here, the Relic Ghost Blaster. It has lethal hits and rapid fire 2. 24-inch range, so if you are within 12-inch range, you're going to get double shots, or 2 extra shots rather. 2 attacks, or you could get 4 at 12-inch range. Hitting on 3s, strength 5, -1 AP, and 2 damage. So that's not massive, but don't forget, this is 40 points, this is a character. Again, you can't expect this to have some sort of damage 3 and things like that on the weaponry. It's just additional shots, and it actually is quite nice in a way because it's got lethal hits. Okay, that's okay, but it's only got a couple of shots. Realistically, you're not going to make massive use of that. The main good thing about this is the damage. It's damage 2, so throughout the battle, providing that he stays alive, he might ping off a few models and it will easily just make his points back just like that. So that's not too bad. The melee weapon is just basically improvised weapons, but it is strength 5, so you do have 4 attacks with him in fact, so it's not just improvised weapons. In fact, it's 4 attacks, hit on 3, strength 5, no AP, 1 damage. Now with Warriors and Immortals, they don't tend to like to be in engagement range anyway, and with his ability, the likelihood is they're probably not going to be. So it's more of a defense if we get charged. We'll get onto that now in fact, so we're going to go onto the right hand side of this data card, which is the abilities. So of course we've already spoken about the leader ability he's got, Immortals and Warriors. He's got reanimation protocols, fine. Adaptive strategy is his main ability. The main reason for taking this guy, this is the ability. So models in the unit that he's with are eligible to shoot or declare a charge in a turn in which they fell back. Now declaring a charge in a turn you've fallen back, you don't think you really want to do it with Warriors and Immortals unless you know that you'll remove and clear a unit, or maybe you're just trying to tag a really strong shooter unit that you don't want firing out at certain things. Maybe it's not a vehicle or a monster, maybe it's just a single infantry model. I don't know. There'll be units in the game that you can tag, and even though we're not a fighting unit, it makes better sense for us to do so. especially on an objective of the OC, right? Warriors and Immortals have high OC of OC 2 per model. But the main part of that ability is to be eligible to shoot when you fall back. So if our Warriors or Immortals do get tagged, we can simply go back, whether it's 1 inch, whether it's 5 inches, whatever, between 1 and 5, of course that's their movement. As long as you're an inch away, we're going to be now firing all the weapons that we've got. So if that's 20 Necron Warriors, that could be 20 Ghost Reapers. If it's the Immortals with the Tesla Carbines, that could be 20 Tesla Carbine shots. Yeah, that's a big deal, I think. That's a big deal. Now, the second ability he's got is the Engrammatic Logic, which is once per battle. At the start of any phase, you can select a friendly Necron unit that's battle shocked within 12 inches, and you simply turn off battle shock. This one is nice. It's helpful. If you do have a battle shocked unit on an objective perhaps, and you've just lost all your OC, and maybe it's going to really hinder your scoring of some secondaries, simply just turning it off is nice. It's an extra bonus to have. It's not the be all and end all. I mean, you've got ways to remove it. You've got the Insane Bravery, which is something that you could potentially use, but a lot of the time you don't need to use it. Our leadership isn't bad. It could be better. It used to be a lot better as in the 9th edition we used to have leadership 10. That used to be really good. We're not as good as that anymore, but we're still not too bad. So yeah, that is kind of all the datasheet has to offer for us. So we'll move into my tactics. So it's useful to note at this stage that you can pair a Royal Warden with a character from your codex. So you've got the options of the Technomancer, the Chronomancer, the Plasmancer, and the Psychomancer, if you're still using that. So if you want to amplify your shooting when you're falling back with your Immortals or Warriors, I would go with the Plasmancer, because you've got the 5+ critical hit rolls. If you want to gain extra movement after falling back, that's where you bring out the Chronomancer, because with that Chronometron ability, once you've shot, you can move 5 inches. So maybe you've fallen back 5 inches, shoot, fall back another 5 inches, you've just gained 10 inches of movement and shot. Plus you've got the -1 to hit penalty for your opponents as well, which is nice. But I think the Royal Warden, for me, works best in Silvertide kind of lists. Okay, the shooting isn't the best, but it could be strength 5, it could be strength 4, depending on the unit. And we want to be making maximum use of our actual ranged weapons and the ranged attacks. So for 40 points, you can do so. I mean, the way I look at a Royal Warden is, rather than it being a character, I just look at it like a unit upgrade. So for 40 points, you're upgrading the entire unit to have the fallback and shoot ability. So if you've got 20 Necron Warriors, that's basically like 2 points extra per head to have the ability to fall back and shoot. If you've got 10 Immortals, it's 4 points extra per head to have the ability to fall back and shoot. That's the way I look at it, rather than looking at him as a character. Although we do have the added bonus of firing out the Relic Ghost Blaster, as well as the enhancement options, which I think is also quite a big deal, especially for just 40 points. Now there's a couple of detachments that I'd like to mention here in this video when you're talking about the Royal Warden. The first one is the Canoptic Core. Now of course he's not a Cryptek, he's not Canoptic, but you can be adding those Crypteks within the same unit as the Royal Warden. So therefore you can be making use of the Cryptek's enhancement, with the enhancement on the Cryptek, not the Royal Warden, but the unit actually gains all the bonuses to it. Also the Power Matrix, you can be making the max use of that, because again there will be a Cryptek within the unit, so therefore the entire unit's going to be rerolling ones or rerolling all the hit rolls within the Power Matrix, which is okay, especially if you are falling back and shooting, which again is the whole reason for taking a Royal Warden. Now within this detachment there is a way to give the entire unit the Infiltrate keyword with one of the enhancements, and again that'll be on the Cryptek rather than the Royal Warden himself. But this will get you closer to enemy units. So maybe if it is the 20 Necron Warriors with the Ghost Reapers, it's only got a 12-inch range. You likely will get within range turn 1 now because of Infiltrate, which is, I think it's a 20-point enhancement. So you're going to get within range, but you also are now within range of, being charged in your opponent's turn. So having that full back ability may be quite good, and just gives us a little bit more flexibility with where we want to go. Like, what do we want to block off? What do we want to screen? If you've got 20 warriors, and I'm going to presume you've lost a few in your opponent's turn, if not the entire unit, depends how it goes. But you can now get them into certain positions where you're blocking up movement. So what you need to then remember is, In your opponent's next movement phase, their movement becomes first before they do any damage to us. So before actually finishing off the unit, they've got to move. Now, unless they've got fly and they can hop over our unit, which will be quite difficult with a 20-man blob, they can't just walk through our unit just like that. I mean, there are, of course, some abilities within the game that allow you to do that, like our Overlord with the Translocation Shroud. He can do it with his unit, but it's quite a rare ability to have. Fly isn't as rare, but if you can sort of spread the unit out, then you're going to be blocking certain units in. Whereas if you're staying within engagement range because the Royal Warden isn't there and you've not fallen back and shot, I mean, you can still fall back, but maybe you're not making max shoots now because you're not shooting. But if you're staying within engagement range to begin with, you could actually just end up losing your unit in your own turn, in your own fight phase, because they've still got to fight. And then you just completely unlock the door for your opponent to then consolidate potentially onto an objective, and then they're free to move kind of in any direction. What we're trying to do here is pen them in while still taking shots. That's kind of what I like about this. Now, I also wanted to give a little mention to the Awakened Dynasty, the index detachment, if you like. By simply giving the Royal Warden to an Immortal unit or Warrior unit, you're going to get the +1 to the hit rolls, which is nice. It's nice. I mean, it's not as good as the Canoptic Court, of course, but a +1 is nice. They'll be hitting on 3s with the Warriors, so I always get that mixed up, but it is 3s with the Warriors, hitting on 2s with the Immortals. So it's a very cheap way to unlock command protocols in that detachment. Again, it's also a very cheap way for the enhancements, which you've already kind of mentioned. But that's the real reason for taking him. I just look at him like an enhancement holder for 40 points. Now let's get into some comparisons. What do you compare the Royal Warden with the Codex? What other units or things in the Codex could you compare to? First of all, I want to mention some characters. Well, yeah, I think mainly it is the characters, right? You've got the Overlord and the Overlord with the Translocation Shroud. Now, they are more than double the points cost of a Royal Warden. They are 85 points. Now, if you are using, say, for example, the Awakened Dynasty, all you need is a character within the unit, and that character could be the Overlord. Now, yes, it's more expensive, but you've got a lot more punch. You can have the Overlord's Blade, you've got the 4+ Invulnerable save, Resurrection Orbs is also there, and of course the My Will Be Done ability, so you've got free battle tactic stratagems at your disposal. I mean, they probably go better with Lich Guard, to be honest with you, but Immortals and Warriors, they're still going to be okay. And especially if you've got the Translocation Shroud Overlord, you can be going through models and you're auto advancing 6 inches. So with Immortals in particular, that's really good. So that's option number 1, and number 1 and 2 if you like. The next option I want to talk about is Imitate the Stormlord for 100 points. A little bit more expensive now, more than twice the amount as the Royal Warden. He's of course a named character, so there's no enhancement. You're losing the enhancement options, which I think is a bad thing. But you've got a CP farm in your list. You're now gaining 1 extra CP every battle round, providing that he's on the battlefield. He's dishing out a fair amount of damage. He's got quite a few different range weapons. He's also got the Storm, what's it called now? The Lord of Storm ability, so he can be throwing out some mortal wounds once per battle as well. So he is another option. Sticking with the epic heroes, you've got Trazyn the Infinite. Now, Trazyn the Infinite isn't really picked that often. I do want to sort of investigate him a bit more. He's the cheaper of the epic heroes. He's 75 points, and he's got sticky objectives, which I think is an underrated ability in this edition. It's just unfortunate that Trazyn is the one that has that ability, because I think it is a really decent ability, but he just doesn't offer anything else in the game apart from that. So yeah, you could talk about Trazyn the Infinite. And finally, there's just the simple option of just not taking him. That is another option to compare to taking it, I guess. 40 points you're saving. I mean, for 40 points you can get a Canoptic Scarab Swarm, 3 of them, 3 bases. It kind of all depends on what you expect from your unit of Immortals or Warriors in terms of damage outlay or survivability, I guess, as well, because if you're falling back, you're going to miss a fight phase, which is good because I don't want to fight. So it all depends on what your game plan is, really. But if you do have 40 points spare and you've already filled up on Scarabs, you could maybe get a Locust Destroyer, but a single Locust Destroyer is only really there to hide behind a terrain feature and block deep strike stuff for 30 points. If not, it's just going to go down quick, whereas a Royal Warden could at least hide within a unit. So let's get into the rate it or hate it section of this video. Where do I go with the Royal Warden? Now, it's, like I said a few times now, fairly cheap. it's almost like just not even having a model, it's just like an upgrade. But do I find myself using the Royal Warden? Not really. And what you need to remember is a lot of our lists that actually have a character in a unit of Immortals or Warriors, you're already going to be taking, say, an Overlord. If you've got the Obeisance Phalanx, for example, you've already got the Overlord there. If you're going with the Canoptic Court, you're going to have a Cryptic there. So you've already got enhancement carriers in that respect. And Warriors, I don't think they're not the best top tier pick. I actually quite like picking them, but I definitely don't take them with a Royal Warden unless I've got the points spare. That's the only thing. If you've got the points spare, then I might throw them in. I might just throw them in, but I'm not planning my entire game plan around a Royal Warden. He's not really there. He's literally just an afterthought for me. So for this video, I'm going to have to go with I hate him.